And there we are. We have now appeared live on YouTube. I will share with you the link really quickly, and then we can let everyone know that we are here. And
I'm gonna quickly try and do like a thing.
Yeah, you are totally fine.
Okay, I'm really bad at this. So web link.
Don't even worry about it.
So swipe up.
We will. Let's see. All right.
I hope this works.
Hey, everybody who is here. If y'all are going to be in the comments section, say hi, let us know you're here as we just kind of make sure that all the links are shared across platforms. And we're letting everybody know. Olga is here. Hi, Olga.
Olga. Hi. Yay.
We always have awesome people showing up. I'm always so glad.
It worked.
Yay, it did.
I'm not
nice.
Technologically challenged anymore.
Success.
Yes.
Right.
Hi,
there we go. There we go. All right, cool. So I think we are shared to everywhere. And we will be able to get started. Chris is here as well. Hi, Chris. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of the Social Hour. Today, I'm going to be joined by one of my favorite photographers / artists, Lillian Liu. She is an award-winning artist whose work has graced the cover of books by best-selling authors, been featured in magazines like Marie Claire, and been exhibited internationally. She's also an award-winning multi-genre pianist who's on the faculty of Vancouver Academy of Music. She also donates her substantial creative talents as a member of the Free Spirit Collective, a humanitarian nonprofit collective that practices philanthropy worldwide. So aside from being obviously a talented human being, she's also a wonderful human being.
Thank
you. Her work is a stunning definition of what fairy tale means. So please join me in welcoming this amazing human being, Lillian. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, I'm really happy. Thank you for asking me.
Yes, I had to.
I got really excited.
Yeah, I had to. I definitely had a list of people when I started putting these interviews together where I was like, okay, there's certain people I really want to make sure I get the chance to talk to. So I'm super, super glad that you said yes.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I'm just really happy that you asked me. So just been living the monotonous routine, for the last few months.
So. Oh yeah. Yeah, the COVIDs. So so far we have, Chris and Olga are here, Becca is here, Kate is here, Kelly, Hannah, and David are here. Welcome, guys. Thank you guys for being here. If you have questions for Lillian, don't forget to stick them in the comments so we can get to them as we go. So the COVID life has been pretty monotonous, but you guys are doing pretty good in Canada, yeah?
Yeah, it's I would say it's a lot better than we perhaps expected, I think, or comparably to some other places in the world. But overall, I mean, overall, like some parts of Canada aren't doing that well compared to other provinces. But I think most people are generally quite cooperative here, at least, and people are mostly on the same page. And I think that's really helped instead of having really strong, opposition towards each other. People are mostly just kind of going with the flow in one direction. So I think it's easy for people to kind of, I guess, navigate right now as best as they can. So
yeah. So what does that look like for you creatively? I know you mentioned you've been doing some remote recordings musically, but what does that have looked like for you photographically?
Well, I was really excited because I was supposed to shoot a lot of new work in the spring and in the summer, because I was hoping to do like an exhibition in the wintertime, but then that stuff's not happening. So I think right now I'm either planning ahead for projects, or I'm I recently opened up shooting sporadically, I think about last month, and with no more than like 2 people at a time. But I think I'll probably only keep my shoots in the summer to like under 4 of them,
Right.
and they're really just small things that I've held in my house for so long, like designs that I've just had to put on hold because the shooting just wasn't possible. So we're just getting all of that done instead of, doing new work. I mean,
Sure.
mhm.
Yeah. Um,
Exciting.
no, it's such a bummer. It's been so hard to have all of that creative stuff stifled, and like
Mhm.
it's so frustrating. So when you said that keeping it to no more than 2 people, do you usually have a full complement of crew on set when you're shooting?
No, but it depends at the same time. So I would say that I prefer if it's under 5 people at the most. Like I know someone might bring a friend sometimes, or maybe hair and makeup artist, myself, maybe 1 or 2 models, that kind of thing. But I think if I'm doing like a multi-look, sort of larger editorial kind of thing, you do end up having larger groups of
Sure.
maybe 8 to 12, and obviously I don't think that's a good idea right now. But I do prefer the more intimate shooting set like situation anyway, so it does work in my favor. But you do
Right.
have to keep the groups small, and I know that the comfort level for models and makeup artists right now is just up and down, so it varies by the person. So
Yeah, for sure. It seems like I've seen a kind of a wide range from people who have been like shooting relatively often, and then some people who are still in studio quite a bit, and then other people who are only shooting outdoors. And it seems like that there's a pretty wide gamut with what people are willing to do right now.
yeah, I guess it's comfort level, right? Individual risk, I suppose. I don't think I would be able to do the outdoor thing much, just because I don't have a lens that works well enough in that situation. But yeah, I think my own comfort level is that, as long as I keep it down to just a small body of people and only a couple of times during the summer, like for me, I think just the creative freedom during that very precious 2 hours that I have are worth it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It kind of helps you stay sane.
Yeah.
For sure. So, being a multidisciplinary artist, was the visual art something that you always loved as well? Because I know you've been a studying musician for a long time. Did those things kind of like evolve together, or how did you grow up like artistically?
Well, I always liked art, but I never, I guess, really pursued it seriously as a kid, because I think my parents were like, okay, you can maybe try out XYZ, but then you should really focus on a couple of things, and we'll only be able to like support you
Right.
financially for like a couple of things that you really want to go towards. And I think, at the time, the music was going really well. So that was the main focus. So most of the, support or anything, and the mentoring and stuff I can't talk today, came for that, sort of section. And the photography thing was kind of late. I would say I was maybe 16 or 17 when I started. And I think that was me initially thinking that it would be easy, I don't know, an easy alternative to being a painter at the same time. I think so. That was my perspective at the time. And I realized later that photography is really not that simple or straightforward at all. Like there's a winding path that you have to follow as well for self-discovery and to like learn and master new tricks and stuff. But at the time, I think my knowledge of it was just point, shoot, right? So I first approached it thinking that it would be like something fun, and then it ended up being a massive rabbit hole that then opened the doors to editing, and then everything else that came with it. And then it started taking up a lot of time, because I realized that, practice makes you better with that. Also that investment in honing the skill, the eye, the craft, it is like a whole wondrous world of challenges and skill sets that I did not expect. And I guess that kind of perhaps shows me kind of the perspective of how people who don't do photography might see photography. Perhaps like they might undervalue it as, you know, perhaps a craft because of how accessible or how easy it is to just take a picture. Like it is quite easy to take your phone out and take a picture, but I think there is perhaps that has almost cheapened the view of what a photograph is, I think, to people, where you don't have to go out and develop it, you know, and stuff. It's just
yeah
on your phone. So
I think you're right. And you mentioned, so you talked about kind of the practice it takes to develop that craft. So do you think, I mean, that's basically what music is, right? Like there's a huge amount of practice and skill building. So did growing up kind of having that ability to practice and to focus on building a skill set, do you think that transferred at all to your learning photography?
I think so, because I think in music, we get the whole discipline thing drilled into our heads. And even though it's a little bit militant sometimes, especially for, you know, like an 11-year-old or like a 5-year-old,
Right.
but you kind of realize the value of like, you know, structured routine as a kid, you know, just to keep you, you know, shooting for goals and stuff, and realizing that your hard work does eventually become something. It's not like an instant gratification sort of activity. So
True.
I think just having that mindset helped me with photography a lot, because I remember I instantly wanted to create these magical masterpieces and nothing was working. Everything looked awful. I remember I tried to airbrush, I think, my first image. I don't know what I did. I think I actually painted on the face, and it obviously looks like an alien mask on the person, but I thought I was pretty proud of it at that moment. But then funny enough, it came full circle, and I'm now painting on faces again for my new stuff. But I think it was how to like hone that skill. But I think for photography, I think application is probably where you learn the most from. I think you can buy all the tutorials, watch all the videos and stuff, but I think if you don't try it out and practice through trying, you never really discover how to work those skills. I think it's weird, because you think that, you know, if you plant this, and this together, something's gonna happen, but I don't know, it needs that personal touch and personal interpretation as well. So
yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's why, you know, workshops can be so valuable if they're structured the right way, because it does give people the chance to take whatever they learned at the first part of the day and be able to put that into effect during the last part of the day, kind of with that guidance from somebody who can help them navigate the things that they, you know, might not be able to think of in studio. I guess what it does is, in a way, it kind of compresses the learning time, right? So that you don't have trial and error extending out for weeks and weeks. Maybe you have at least this guidance for the first part, and maybe it can kind of condense that time of navigating a new skill set.
And I think just having that hands-on moment in a workshop, I think just makes that workshop so much more attractive in a way, because you can just, you know, try it and see if it works for you and make the tweaks that you need, because I think there's more than one way to do everything. It's just,
agreed.
What works for you, right? So.
Yes, agreed. So you have your first images that you're making, and things are not turning out the way that you hoped that they would. And then you said you kind of felt like you kind of, you know, as you're shooting now, you're learning editing, right? And so what did that look like for you, that process of, because I know for me, editing was initially, I'm not a very good shooter. I have to fix this all in post-production. I did not have any stylistic views in mind of what I thought the editing should look like. It was just make it better. And your style has definitely evolved into something. I mean, your editing style is obviously as unique as your shooting style. So what did that process look like for you?
It was kind of messy. But I would say that, first of all, when I first started shooting, it wasn't people, because at the time I guess my exposure to photography mainly was through, you know, I really liked my nature magazines because the photographs of the landscapes were so pretty, right? And then I was, you know, always kind of a fan of birds, bird watching and stuff. So I thought, hey, why don't I shoot pictures of pretty nature or, you know, natural things in my backyard or something. So like as a teenager, just go out to the grocery store, try to take pictures of the little flowers on display and stuff. And it was just fun. And I think in a way that sort of fun attitude is really important because there wasn't an expectation for what was at the end. It was just, let's try this. And I think that attitude was important. But the editing came from me looking at the pictures, kind of like yourself, and just being like, well, this is kind of ugly. How do I make it better? And then so I decided to use my school computer's Photoshop. Like we had like that Adobe Suite thing at the time with all the computers. And I think it wasn't even, I didn't have an image in my mind of where I wanted things to go. It was mostly, you know, what can I do to make this look different? Because I didn't like how it looked right now. And I think some of it came from, you know, turning up the hue and saturation way too high, but it did look different afterwards, right? And, you know, there was always turning up the contrast really, really high and just thinking, okay, that's different, right? And just feeling quite satisfied with differences as opposed to what was maybe, you know, an idea, stepping towards a bigger idea, so to speak. And I think at the time I was also like a little teenager, like looking at DeviantArt and all that stuff.
Yes.
And I was really inspired by painters especially, or like, you know, a lot of beautiful macro photography there at the time too. And I was just thinking, wow, this water droplet is very blue. How do I get this? And I would just play around like that. And so initially it was mostly just fun stuff until I realized that, hey, editing people, it doesn't look good when you turn the saturation they turn orange or a different color.
Yeah, it doesn't work as well on like landscapes and stuff. It's just a smidge different.
Exactly. If you know, I make this green more intense, it's kind of interesting to me at the time. And then I do that to a person and why is the whole picture changing? Not just a part of the picture. And so I had to learn about masking and stuff like that. And so I think the skills came in as I realized that I was missing a core component of knowledge here and there as the problems came. But I think that's why trying and failing is so important, or application, right? Because then you realize, what don't I know? And then fill the holes there. So yeah, that's my path to editing. So.
I agree with you. I feel like that's probably pretty similar for most of us, where we were just like, oh no, this is not good. What does this do? What does that do? Oh, that's not that's not what I wanted it to be. So at what point or when do you think that you started to have more of a cohesive vision for what you wanted to make?
I think maybe at this point, it's now like 4 or 5 years ago. That's when it really started to be concrete. I would say before then, I was just trying to do everything. Like I thought maybe if I became good at all styles, I would be, you know, marketable, blah, blah, blah. And then no, didn't turn out. Yeah, because then you realize that, wow, you know, getting a certain look to your images depends perhaps on what you have on hand as well. Like, you know, lighting plays a very big factor in certain looks that you might want to achieve. Of course, there are ways to fake it, but how much work is that compared to just getting like a proper set? And so I was realizing that, you know, I could do it for fun, but I probably can't be all of these things. Yeah, unless I don't know, had a million arms and lots of money and time, right?
Could travel time, yeah.
You know, what inspires me? And I was like, okay, I mean, I was still just shooting kind of fun looks with my friends and they got to be a model for a day, they loved it, kind of thing. And I realized that I was kind of getting somewhere with that. But then I realized that I kind of liked to pick what they were wearing a lot more often. And then I realized that kind of segued into me liking to arrange the set a little bit more, and paired up with my love of sharp things and swords kind of blended together. And I was just thinking, wait a second, I might have something here. And then it just kind of became a thing about 5 years ago. But I would say that finding a good way to consecutively execute all of these ideas in a style that was cohesive was also a bit messy in the beginning, because I
Sure.
realized that I realized early, even when shooting with my friends, that of course each session with every model is very different, because everyone works in their own way, and models are very unique in their own way as well with how they deliver and express. So I think what became a very important part of my skill set now to create cohesive imagery is how I walk my models or coach them through one of my shoots. And then I think just to create something that looks like it's from the same universe, I think a lot of it has to be kind of my job to make sure the model's comfortable enough to kind of, okay, I'll do this, right? And follow along to kind of get immersed in something. So I think a big part of that growth was learning the people skills,
Right.
How to bounce your ideas off of someone else, or how to read their energy and perhaps portray it in a way that suits the shoots, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so there's that. And I think the whole painting thing was because I got jealous that actual painters knew how to paint. I didn't know how to paint. So I said, well, I'll kind of fake it. I'll fake my painting. And it kind of stemmed from that mentality of like, I wish I had this skill set, but perhaps this skill set needs to be honed from years back, and perhaps I could learn now, but then there's this. So yeah, that's my condensed story.
I love, that's so funny. It seems so far, I would have to say a majority of the people that I've interviewed are like, well, I couldn't paint, or I couldn't draw, or like there's this kind of connection of like, this gives me the ability to make what I want without having to do the painstaking process of like learning all of that from the very beginning. It's really interesting that is such a thing for so many of us.
Yeah.
And I mean, I identify as well, although I've been drawing since I was little, but there's definitely, you can get the realism and the suspension of disbelief so much faster if you can include something that looks real. Like it makes the process so much easier.
Yeah.
So Kelly Robitaille says, when I first started getting into creative photography, I was obsessed with Lillian's style and tried to emulate it as best as I could. Fangirl.
Oh my goodness. Kelly's work is something else. It is incredible because she has that distinctive, instantly recognizable style. And I think so many photographers ask, how do I get my brand, right? And I think you do have to go through that process that I think I went through as well, of just, oh, I want to be everything, right? Yeah. And finding what you're really actually natural at, right?
Sure.
Or what brings you the most happiness, right?
Right. What sparks joy.
Yeah, exactly. And Kelly's stuff, so you see it, it's right.
Yes. Yeah. And that's her. It's so unique to her. And there's 100% people who you look at your work and that that's, Kelly, or that that's Lillian, that that's Kate, those people, you're like, yep, I totally recognize that. And that's such a powerful thing to have as part of the creative community, or even just somebody who wants to sell their work. It makes your collectors want to come back to you.
Yeah, so Kelly's branding is spot on.
Yes.
Also so
yes. And Sarah J just got here. Hi, Sarah. And Kate said painting takes too long.
It does. It really does. I mean, of course, I was still jealous of all the painters and stuff. But, in a way, funny enough, I tried to imitate the painterly look, but initially I was doing it in a really stupid way, I think. Like, oh, this painting's kind of impressionist. It's a bit blurry. What if I shook my camera? And then I was thinking, this looks kind of cool, but I'm not getting consistent results. So it's literally there, like jiggling my camera. And then I was shooting. I was like, no, this is
not the answer.
No. So I know, you hear so many wonderful techniques from people, putting filters with like materials scraped on them for that really organic look. But then at the same time, I was such a control freak over how things would turn out that even a little speck of something that was off drove me insane. So
Right.
I like the liberty of having Photoshop to actually correct my terrible mistakes and anything that I might have missed with my eye, because I just know it haunts me forever if I see it and then not unsee it. So yeah.
So your editing style then is heavily influenced by painters.
Yeah. So
Yes.
my dream of being a painter. So
Yes. So for you, some of the artists that I've talked to so far have said for them, like they have a kind of an overarching approach to how they edit. And for when I was talking to Pauline, her main thing is to keep it simple and then to remove as much as possible, right? For her, it's like, if I can get rid of anything that doesn't really need to be there, then what's left is what should be there. And, talking to Tyler Jacobson, who's a painter, his thing is, beginning with composition and then telling a story and making sure the story elements are there, because his work is, very much obviously related to fantasy, but it's in settings where it has to tell a story. That's the job of the painting. So their approaches, they have kind of an overarching approach to how they edit and how they paint. So is there something like that for you that's like your overall, umbrella that you edit under?
Mm-hmm. I guess there kind of is. Granted, because every shoot is so different that, what I do to each picture is not really so much a routine. But I think how I approach the editing first is I look at the raw file and I think, is this enough on its own in terms of composition, or what's missing that I could potentially add? And sometimes less is more, sometimes more is better, right? But I think it depends on your shot. And, if I'm not satisfied with the composition, that is the one first thing that I battle with, whether it's, expanding your viewpoint and adding more elements, or even like condensing your viewpoint, I think actually solves a lot of problems too, right? So
when you say condensing your viewpoint, for people who aren't familiar with this, what does that mean to you?
I'm not really the biggest fan of closer crops, but sometimes it's a good idea. Or I might find another image that is from the same set that is similar. I always make sure to take close, medium, range, and far, just in case I change my mind later, so that I can always visualize it differently each time. I think it's really helpful to have a memory card full of pictures that maybe are the same inspired pose, but from different lengths. And you really see things differently that way. And so that's how I like to think first. I think that's the first step. And then my second step is thinking about color. I like to think about color first. Because normally I'm not very satisfied with the colors in my images. Like I don't really tend to sculpt color or create color in person, just because I don't have the right tools for it to properly get it done well, right?
Sure.
So I'd rather just do it in post, and I like to think about what my intentions are and then noodle around there. And then after I get my general plan, then I start with the skin editing and stuff. And after that is done, I make sure to add in more shade and light depending on what's needed. Like if it wasn't convincing enough, I'm a really big fan of minimizing the background sometimes. So that might mean darkening the background a lot, or having gradients in the background if I think it's detracting away from all the stuff.
Right.
So I'm actually, in a way, a fan of minimalism in the background sometimes, and crazy on the model. Although I like my fair share of beautiful backgrounds as well. And so the background is often what I change the most. And if you were to see a raw, you might realize, oh, it was a forest behind her. And no, I didn't like the forest. So I took it out. And I think you can see that with the Athena photo. actually.
Yes.
Shot that in the woods sitting on a log.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, because we were going to shoot with, again, some rocks and stuff, but it just did not work out. So we were just like thinking, okay, the shoot must go on. We'll get the right shots. And then I darkened the log to the point where you could not see it anymore.
Right.
And so dark that I was able to then add in other elements to it. And of course, the owl is real, but yeah, I think the background has been through a lot of transformation, that's for sure.
Sure.
Yeah, and the background is from the Backdrop Studio as well. So
shout out to the Backdrop Studio.
So exciting. It's like I just want to use all the backdrops.
I know, they're so good.
Everything just to see, ooh, what does this look like, right?
Yes.
But I think the final details of an image come after I'm completely finished the toning and skin and the shadows and everything. And I'm thinking, what other elements can I add that would make the story or look complete? Is there too much negative space here? And then I might start compositing items in as I see fit. And it goes from there. So
yeah, that makes sense. And looking through, you can definitely see, you know, the backgrounds that are there all assist in the story without detracting from the subject, which definitely, you know, kind of falls into line with your description. And then, and I know people will want to know this because it's something people comment on your work a lot, but when you're approaching the skin editing, what is your process like for that?
It's kind of conflicting sometimes because on one end, I love making the skin like how it is. But then at the same time, sometimes people approach it. Like I was printing my photos off at a photography store and they asked me, oh, render, like, are you like a painter or something? And sometimes people think it's perhaps too artificial in a sense. And that's kind of sad in a way, but then at the same time, I do enjoy it. So I keep doing it. But I think the main thing for me when I approach skin is how do I make the colors blend together while retaining some texture still when you zoom into a photograph or when you print it. It still looks in up close. It's just from afar. It's a little bit more, mattified's not the word. It's a little bit more zoom.
So like, is it a thing with color transition for you? Like making sure that there's like a smoother transition to the color or?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to play with blurs a lot, or I like to paint on other colors that complement the skin tone model. And I try to kind of blend that into the picture. So it's very trial and error sometimes.
Sure.
Or I might realize in the end that some of the colors I picked after I toned them just kind of doesn't quite work out. So you have to start from scratch again. But I think the really important part of me is of the process is to think, kind of approach the image like a makeup artist in a sense. Like, you know, what parts make sense with more shadow, or what would make the image more dramatic if it was darker here, if it was lighter here. And I know that people like to paint in highlights a lot, and I love painting in highlights as well. But it's also really easy, I think, for me to mess up and make them look too sometimes. And I think that was a problem I was having a few years ago because I was using a mouse the whole time.
Oh,
okay. So I didn't have a tablet until maybe like a few years ago. And then it was hard for that, you know, there was no pressure sensitivity. So everything was too flat. So I think, yeah, so it was a rough period, but I think painting like dodge and burn is always quite essential, but I think sometimes approaching the dodge and burn through, instead of creating the artificial light, which you can do, but it just takes a long time.
Yes, it does.
If you sculpt the light perfectly in person and you accentuate, then the image becomes a lot more seamless, and then your dodge and burn doesn't make you cry because cover and stuff. So I think actually framing the shot in terms of lighting just right from the get-go is really important to me. I mean, there
Sure.
are my portfolio where the light is completely fake, but I kind of regret almost not controlling the light initially because
Mm,
every aspect, every angle of it to make it look real. Otherwise, the eye knows something is wrong, right?
yes. Yeah.
So don't be lazy, is what I tell myself.
Do you find yourself using, I know for me, I find when I'm doing skin work, I end up using, I probably dodge more than I burn, but when I'm doing like macro on the entire image, I burn way more than I dodge. Do you have anything when you're working that you're like, I find myself doing this often?
You know, I had a period where I was like anti-dodge. And I realized that it was probably because I was using a mouse and I didn't know
Oh, yeah.
well because I thought it was so ugly at the time. And I realized like, no, dodge is my friend now. So in a way, I think I prefer using the dodge tool a lot more. Uh, sorry, not the dodge tool. What am I saying? The burn, anti-burn. Yes, completely brain farted for a moment. I was anti-burn tool because it was hard for me to control. And now I actually enjoy using the burn tool a lot because for me, I find that, did you know that thing when you use the dodge tool a lot and then you start seeing the pixels a little bit?
Yes.
It doesn't happen so much with the burn tool for me.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm more of a burn tool side now, but I do like both. They both have their place.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
They absolutely do.
Mhm.
So for people who, and I know you must get these questions often, but for people who are interested in doing this kind of work, when I let people know I was interviewing you, one of the things that they asked is like, where does she get these costumes? Like, how is she working with these amazing pieces? What do you have certain designers that you work with, or are you renting, buying? How does that look?
So most of the time, I'm working directly with the designer. So they send me something and I send it back. So I usually recommend that developing a good relationship with the designer. The only catch is it is expensive
Right.
because you want to make sure the box is safe when it's sent back. So you take every precaution to package it well. You pay a little extra for some insurance just in case.
Sure.
8 emergencies except for one, so it was good. But it is an investment. But I do see elevating your portfolio in any means as a good initial investment. And
Sure.
people, they find that in the end, it's more financially smart to actually purchase the piece
Mm-hmm.
in a way, depending on how big it is. And
Sure.
I definitely can recommend that too, especially their accessories that you can reuse over and over again.
Right.
Any shoots and just mask them in terms of color, and stuff. They're quite versatile. I think those ones are definitely worth purchasing for sure. And for the large pieces that are one of a kind, where like perhaps if they're out of your budget or price range, often I get them loaned through me, not to me, sorry, either loaned to me directly from the designer if they tell me specifically what they envision for it a little bit.
Right.
Becomes something that they can use afterwards in their portfolio. And there are a few designers that I like working with the most, just because our brains are kind of on the same wavelength.
Sure.
But most people who create wearable art, I think getting usable images is what they want from a trade like this. So
Right.
they need both commercial looking images and or slash product images sometimes, and they also need images that feature the item creatively. So
Mm-hmm.
they definitely don't come to me for product images.
Right.
But I guess for something creative, be like, oh, can you maybe feature this piece in a fantasy sort of way? And I'd be like, of course. But I think surprisingly, there's a lot you can do with very little as well.
Agreed.
I think in a shoot, I mean, it's always easier to have beautiful costumes and stuff. It's almost less work in a way to put together something when you have something there that speaks for, that tells such a big story already. But I think if you get a hot glue gun, which is essential,
Agreed.
right?
Be prepared to burn yourself, but please have that.
Double-sided tape, your local dollar store or craft store, you can actually come up with a lot, I think. And a lot of these pieces that I might have created myself, I didn't create a lot of these other pieces myself, but for the ones that I have, they're very ugly on the back, but they're very nice. And that's enough, honestly, I think. So you can, I like to keep my budgeting for a shoot quite low most of the time. And most of it goes to mailing the box back. But if I had to make my own stuff, I think you can make a pretty cool look under $100. And you can also always reuse those materials, like taking them apart, using them on other things and stuff. So you just need a glue gun. I think that's the one. Yes.
Yes, you do. You need a glue gun. A friend of mine, her name is Namiko. She's a jewelry designer in Seattle, and she has a fairly well-known image that's of a woman with her back to the camera, and she's wearing a crown and a necklace that's draping down her back. And it's all over Pinterest, but the crowns she's created with hot glue.
So nobody knows, right?
It's and it looks extraordinary. It looks extraordinary. I mean, if it doesn't really matter so much what the material is if it comes out looking fantastic. So
yeah, and also Photoshop is also great for emergencies. So if this thing starts drooping a little bit on top, which has happened to me because I don't have the skill set to necessarily reinforce my pieces in a way that like a wonderful designer would.
Right.
Then sometimes I can make little fixes just to post. So yeah.
True.
So yeah. So there's many ways to get like a cool look put together.
Right. Sure. Yeah. And especially, I mean, a lot of photographers who are creative in what they make sometimes forget that they need to use their creativity and problem solving as well when it comes to what you're using for a shoot or how you work with people, or you gotta put that stuff to work and figure out creative solutions to the problem of how do I get really awesome costumes.
Mm-hmm. And a little something I discovered for costuming was that when there was a time where there was a period in time when I was still studying that I had no time to create my own stuff. And I realized that raiding the local opera house or theater company, a really good solution. Yes. And so if you ask nicely, they might say yes, and they have a wide range of tried and true looks that might not necessarily be brand new or anything, but that's okay. Sure. Right? And it's a good way, a stepping stone towards maybe getting that one piece you may not have.
Good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So make friends with opera houses.
Yes. Because they will always have fantastic things.
Yes.
So once your pieces are created, what is the end goal for them? Are you selling, fine art pieces, or are you looking to get commissioned to create things for people, or what's the goal of these pieces?
I don't know. I create to make me pretty happy, I guess. Granted, I think right now I'm thinking a little bit broader. I would love to be able to one day, I don't have necessarily the resources right now, but to create, an exhibit with large scale pieces.
Sure.
Right? And that would take a lot of planning and stuff, but that would be something to look forward to maybe. But I think I don't really have necessarily an end goal for the creation. I just have to like it and it has to make me happy. Yes. And then I create it. And what comes afterward comes afterward, I think, like whether it's book covers or that stuff. But I guess for me, it's less about monetizing, I think, than just creating, because if I don't, I will go nuts.
Yeah. Which is a completely legitimate reason to make things.
I will.
Yes, I will agree with you there. So everybody, we are starting to get close to our hour. We only have a little bit less than 15 minutes left. So if you guys have questions for Lillian, please ask them so we can make sure we get to them after all of the kind of fantastic advice she has given so far. So we have one already. Reality Reimagined. David, hello. Thanks for being here again. He asks, aside from dodge and burn, any recommended techniques to continue to build the painterly effect?
I think dodge and burn are your two main tools. Something else I would suggest is I really like the blending modes as well. So my favorite, and especially to play with its opacity, is also soft light.
Mm-hmm.
Just because to add different colors or shadows and stuff, I think that is the least obtrusive one. And it allows me to play around just to see what works and what doesn't. And I think that's probably my most abused blending mode of all time for everything. Yeah, it's definitely that one. So I would say dodge burn and, you know, actually painting different layers and using a gentle blending mode and seeing what happens.
Sure.
Experimenting. And there's nothing else that really comes to mind, but I will say that one tip I can give is that when you have that painterly look, it's removing texture as opposed to keeping texture. So, but just in case you make a mistake and you want to start over, I always emphasize, I make so many copies of this because I forget sometimes, keep your original layer and keep the texture there and superimpose it, play around with how much you want to keep and how much you don't want to keep. And then it gives you that freedom. But I would say the less texture you have, the more painterly it does look. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I like it. So,
Right. Yes, agreed. I have found as I'm practicing digital art, the more texture I add, the more real it feels, and then the less texture I add, the more digital it feels. And so it's definitely interesting the way you can kind of play with just that alone and see the difference that it makes and how people respond to the images. Yeah, really, really interesting about that. Let's see. Kelly said, question, will you be my friend?
I can't. I'm your friend all the time.
Yes.
Come to my house.
And then David asks again, techniques to bring out those strong, metallic, colorful highlights in key areas of the body.
Ooh, highlight. I like to say that if you can get it in the actual shot first, it will save you a lot of headache.
Have a good makeup artist.
Yeah, body highlight is a lifesaver. Or just even buying like a cheap drugstore highlighter with a brush and just applying it onto the models yourself for key areas that where the light hits will really help. But if you want to do it digitally, I think for me, playing with I'll make many layers of the same thing, but I might adjust the brightness of certain parts of it, and then I try to blend them in. I think that still keeps the integrity of like the texture that I might want to keep and stuff, and then just kind of blend out the edges a little bit. But that is more time consuming than actually doing it, firsthand. But I think another thing is to bring out the highlights, I would say, is to turn down the exposure of the picture and very gently keeping the highlights bright in a couple of other areas, and then trying to tweak that. I think that's also a little cheaty cheat.
If it works, it's not a cheat, it's a technique. So there. And then, so David would like to know, hi David, do you have any favorite lighting modifiers?
Oh, I need to buy one. That's the thing. Lighting has been this very scary thing for me because of the price tag. And I guess, when I was studying still like a couple of years ago, that was like, So I'm looking into some stuff. So if there are recommendations, please throw them my way because I don't have any right now. But how I've been working right now is just either with my own little soft boxes, I guess, and I might use my little loom cubes. I love little loom cubes, and I have like little tissue papers and stuff in front of them. Just anything to try and diffuse the light a little bit and stuff. Right. So I have nothing otherwise, and I need to go buy some. So
I hope that that's really inspiring for people who are either, for whatever reason, whether it's expense or just that I know for some people it's intimidating all by itself, learning, to use strobes or kind of other kind of lighting. But for whatever reason, guys, Lillian is making magic without all of the extra modifiers and everything else. And if she
But
can
I want
do it,
them
you
because
can
it
do
time.
it. Yes.
It would be a lot of time, and I've been lucky enough to, visit studios that have things for me to play with. And I'm just really, wow, I don't need to spend 3 hours on this if I had this. Right. So these tools exist for a reason. And I think I'm getting a little bit lazy sometimes. And I don't want to do 4 hours of like faking something, right? I want it in the picture, quality, ready to go. And then I can just do the playing, the fun part.
Yes.
Right? The editing. So
I cannot wait once you start diving into lighting to see how that changes things for you. Number one, I hope it never changes the feel of your work. But number two, it's going to be great because then with having all of that extra light control, who knows what you're going to be capable of? Like, it's going to be the best. It's going to be the best. Kelly said really quickly, have you ever tried channels for highlights? So she loves to use channels for highlights. I know, right? Like, ooh, I just have ideas now. And then she also said it makes her feel really good to hear that you are just starting out with lighting, because she is doing the same. She's been working with, I think, not much in the way of light so far. So yeah, guys, you don't have to have a lot of expensive equipment to make really beautiful stuff. And David says, that's actually really inspiring because your work looks high end. You don't need anything to make your work look that way.
Thank you. Thank you. But just to answer Kelly's question about channels, I love channels, but I'm not very good with them. I find often that, the big question mark over my head is I'm like playing around with them. But I find that recently I've been starting to warm up to them a bit because they give me a finer degree of control in many ways. So I think channels were not my friend before. They are becoming my friend.
We're building a relationship.
So I do like channels, but not my main way of.
Yeah, I rarely as well. I rarely use them, mostly for masking hair. Tends to be.
I don't like masking hair.
No, it's the worst thing ever, which is why I've started to develop my own technique of replacing backgrounds. I'm just like, I'll stick it on top and then I'll blend mode it and I'll softly like put it in places because I don't want to mask the hair.
The worst, number one worst.
It is 100%, especially there's always, or there is a lot of like a sense of movement in your work so often. So I cannot imagine wanting to be like, yeah, let's have the hair blowing around and change the background completely. It's like the worst thing in the world.
Hairstylists hate me, I'm pretty sure, because I tell my models to move so much that it goes.
Yep. Yeah, I love me some blowing hair, so I feel you. I'm like, the messier it is, the happier I am. Just messy all the hairs. Let's see. So Hannah said, what kind of lighting did you use for the Theodore shoot?
Oh,
does she mean Theodred?
Yes, that one.
Okay, I was like, who is Theodore? Why don't I know about this?
That shoot, funny enough, was a nightmare lighting wise because we used natural light to shoot it because we were just in this open field and the sun kept chasing me and I hated it because we had everything set up. It took so long, and then by the time it was set up the sun moved and so that was a bit of a nightmare. But I realized just getting the shots clear, well lit first was the most important thing, and then that picture out of most of my images is probably the one that has the most artificial light. So that was heavily manipulated and put in afterwards because it was me trying to fight the South Carolina sun at the time.
Oh, South Carolina, everybody in those armor. Oh, it had to be so hot.
It wasn't fun for anyone, I think, wearing that. So we just said, get the shots clean.
Right.
Yes, you need a high quality photograph to work with and then do all the stuff after. So that one was, I would say that one is less photograph and more manipulation. So like some of my pieces are definitely more manipulated than others. That one is highly manipulated. Highly.
As long as it's pretty when it's done, that's the important part. Um, let's see. Kate says, it's a double-edged sword. Sometimes new toys make me stray away from the vision. So never lose sight of yours because it's wonderful.
Thank you, Kate. Oh my goodness. I love Kate's work so much.
I know.
So
I know.
fun. So
I hate her because she's so good.
I know.
And then David said, lastly, can we clone Lillian? Because I want a mini Lillian to cheer me on when I'm working. Kate, thanks, bye.
I'll send you motivational speeches.
Yes, just show up and be like, you can do it.
Exactly.
I love that. All right, guys, it's getting very, very close. We're almost there. So make sure any last questions, get those in really quickly so we can address them. Lillian, so one of the things I want to make sure that I ask everybody before we go is, what is your why? So why imagery? Why photography? Why are you creating?
I mean, funny enough, the first answer that came into my head was kind of in like a little bit of a happy voice, was just saying, because I want to, right?
Which is legitimate.
I think I was thinking deeper a little bit. I think it's because I love consuming media, but I find that there is a lot of satisfaction in creating your own and putting your perspective on some of this stuff. And I think, I think what drives me to create is because I genuinely just want to fiddle with something too. And I think if I didn't like it, I would treat it as a chore and actually avoid doing it, because that's just who I am as a person. But so I create because it makes me happy. It provides a really good outlet actually for hyper focusing. And I'm the type of person that when my mind is going places, it's hard for me to get anything done because I'm paralyzed by my own sense of what's next, right? Because there's so much on in all these different directions, so many things I need to do, right? So I, when you just commit to an image, it's actually a very good way of channeling all of that extra nervous energy, and you put intention and you put love into it, and then it's like your baby.
It is. I agree. Everybody has had such different answers to this question so far, which I love, because we're all making things and putting things out to the world, but there's these different motivations for why people are doing it. And you definitely have hit on a couple things that I think are very valid for me, just as far as this is where I turn when everything else is crazy. Like, there's so much going on, and how am I going to keep up, and this, that, and the other thing, and the kids, and it's the next thing, and I have these responsibilities. I'm like, I'm just going to make a picture.
It might be like running away from a problem, but that's okay.
It's running away to a productive place though, so that's good, right? Right, guys, right?
Exactly.
Tell me it's okay. Right? Please, that's all I need in my life is validation. And then Kate says, so last question, guys. Kate said, can we hang out when COVID is over?
Yes! Oh my goodness, can we just eat?
You know what we need to do? Can we please have like a convention of fantasy photographers? Like, let's just,
that'd be so cute.
Let's do that. All the fantasy photographers.
Make pretty pictures and eat. And
all the food.
Talk about dorky stuff.
Yes, we can watch Lord of the Rings. We'll have a marathon. That would make me so happy.
I know, me too.
All right, guys. And Kate said dumplings. Yep. Yeah. Let's do dumplings as well. We'll just have all the food and all the nerdiness. Let's just do that. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys showing up on the regular to come and support these incredible artists and ask them these awesome questions. I love having you guys here, and I hope that these kind of interviews have been really helpful and empowering for you. If you are enjoying this content, I know I say this every time, but if you could like the video, please, if you could do that. And if you could subscribe and share, that would be amazing, because that means that people who need to see Lillian talk about artistic stuff can know that she is doing interviews and can be here. At the end of this week on Friday, I'm going to be interviewing Chris. He jumps out of airplanes and takes pictures in the air of like Canadians flying through the air. So
he's so much cooler than all of us.
So cool. So I'm going to be talking to him on Friday. So if you guys want to learn more about kind of that genre of photography, be here for that. Lillian, thank you again. You are an angel. I'm so glad we got to have this talk. I feel like getting a peek into your creative process was so cool and hopefully really affirming for a lot of people who are like, I don't have all of the extra goodies, but I have ideas.
Yes, all you need are ideas and patience. Lots of patience.
And from what you've explained so far, just a willingness to experiment and have fun, right? And try things and see if they work for you.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for asking me.
Yes, I'm super, super glad. All right, everybody. Until this Friday, I hope you'll join me then. I will see you. And make sure that you go hit up Lillian's Instagram, go check out her website, go give her some love, go share her content all over the interwebs. And until Friday, bye.